And I love listening to your show because I feel like it's a trip into another culture, both into Kung Fu and then sometimes you take us into Hong Kong as well, you know, so it's a great trip. Now, being someone who is so well versed in Chinese culture, what can Americans learn from Chinese culture and vice versa?
That's a great question. Yeah, I feel that my life has been greatly enhanced by this kind of voluntary embracing of Chinese culture. My wife is from Hong Kong. My first, our first child was born in Hong Kong. So it's a place that I have a lot of connection to since seeing Enter the Dragon when I was 8 years old. Um, it's interesting because what I really admire about the Chinese is this kind of going forward kind of work ethic where they're very singularly focused, and and in my experience they're willing to kind of put aside the petty things that people like to show for vanity to do what they need to do for their family or do what they need to do for their career. And one of a constant example that comes up is I know a number of old Hong Kong movie stars, like people who were in those movies back in the 70s, the Shaw Brothers movies and all those things. And these are people I grew up watching their movies. And now, for whatever reason, through connections in the martial arts circle, I've met some of them. And what's interesting is that some of them, when their movie careers, were no longer, they got too old to do kung fu or whatever, many of them, and even ones I haven't met, I've heard the same story again and again. They have no problem going, all right, I'm not a movie star anymore. I need to get to work and I need to get a job. And like you'll hear that after their movie career, they went and became a lawyer, or they opened a factory, or they did something. And here in New York, where we have a lot of former actors, I should say, people who did one movie back in the 80s and they haven't done anything since, they walk around as if they're George Clooney and they haven't done a movie in 30 years and they're still holding out for this other thing without the discipline to actually go and really try to get another movie role. Like in their mind, they're still a movie star. Whereas the Chinese are very practical. I'm not a movie star anymore. I need to provide for my family. This is what I need to do. And they will go and do it. And I find that super admirable because you're putting, you know, what needs to be done over your ego being stroked for still being in movies or still, being in the spotlight. And I find that kind of work ethic really fascinating, and I think that that is a really good thing to emulate. Always being very clear about where you are and what you need to do, and not have that conflict about what you think you are or what you would like to do, but be very clear about where you are and what you need to do. And I find that the Chinese are experts at that. What can the Chinese learn from Western culture? Well, I think a lot of the best things from Western culture are already seeping into Chinese culture, especially in Hong Kong, which was a British colony for a very long time. Hong Kong's an interesting place because it's different culturally from mainland China. You have this mix of the European from, being a British colony for such a long time, as well as the traditional Chinese culture. And this fusion has created something very unique. And I find that, a lot of the very successful Hong Kong businessmen actually adopt a lot of ideas, the better ideas that come from Western culture. And so I find that that mix is already there. What exactly that is, I couldn't say. I'm sure it's individual. Be difficult for me to say what Chinese people would uh, prefer to take from Western culture, but I can see that it's definitely happened already.